Hi, I'm Ed from Wright. Let's have an honest conversation today about tariffs and costs and where some of these things are headed. So before we really get into it, this is a blatant sales pitch. I'll just warn you of that. So first off, whether you like these tariffs or not, it's something we all have to deal with. And even if these tariffs are not as maybe major as we think they are here as we sit in the first week of May, we know that there's going to be a certain amount of inflation in material costs of goods. It's been happening for years, and there's a lot of things that are baked in to increasing costs with or without tariffs. So whether we like it or not, we believe that part of our patriotic duty and part of our values to you is to give you the best for your money. And we expect from our suppliers and from ourselves that these costs, that we don't mark them up as a percent. And I'm going to get mathematical here for just a quick second. So let's say that we've got a 10% increase on tariffs, and then we increase that part as a 10% cost increase to you. What happens is that's more dollars to you than it is to us, because our import cost basis may be different than the price that you buy the machine at. So we expect from ourselves and from our vendors, and we have many really good vendor partners that I think see this the same way, that are either absorbing part of those costs at cost basis or at a minimum only passing on that tariff amount and not increasing the percentage. Now, this is actually something that kind of maybe seem obvious as we talk about it here, but the reality is that especially publicly traded companies really struggle with this. They have a margin that they need to deliver to the stock market. And so if they absorb a cost, what happens is they experience margin dilution, which is not okay in the publicly traded markets. Now, other types of companies can handle that because there is not an increase in risk that requires an increase in profit. And at the end of the day, those profit dollars would be basically the same dollars. And at the end of the day, we take dollars to the bank, not percentages to the bank. And so that's our expectation of ourselves and our suppliers, is that we're not capitalizing on any of these things that are going on to increase our profits. Now, the other thing that's happening is that recognize that material moves slowly. And the reality is here in the second week of May, we really don't have any increased costs on our materials. And we have a lot of mowers that are in our dealers that were built with pre-inflation and pre-tariff costs. And so we don't think that right now is a good time to be looking at increasing prices. Now, anything can change. It's not clear to really anyone what some of the costs will be coming into the next season or even the end of the summer. And usually most of our industry reprices in the midsummer era anyways. So we're running some promotions right now with this in mind. So let me speak to why I also think that we're in a little bit different position than many of our peers, and I have a little bit of a story to tell to get to that point. Around 20 years ago, one of our lead buyers at that time was doing some work in an effort to save us a lot of money. And they were importing a bunch of items, and looking back, that was a bit of a mistake. And that was around the time when I got involved in the business as a young engineer. And I spent many years unwinding those supply contracts and those quantities that we had been committed to and those kinds of things. And I got an up-close and personal lesson on some of the effects of procuring things from faraway places when it's not necessary. And so over the past 20 years, and especially the past 15 years, we've done a lot of things to put an emphasis on buying things from suppliers that we have a close relationship with, or near to us as possible, and that are on our same wavelength in terms of how we do things and where we're going and the innovation involved in that type of thing. Then COVID came along, which created a lot of supply chain issues. And again, there were things that we didn't even realize were being imported that we ended up, again, bringing closer and closer to our factory. And so now more than ever, we work with a lot of subcomponent suppliers that are very close to us. Many of them are even in Pennsylvania. Now, you look at a mower, you might say, well, everybody kind of buys the same major components. And while that's true, there's a lot of dollars in the other components that make up these machines. One of the greatest differentiators between what we're doing and what some of our competitors are doing is it's common to import sub-assemblies. You know, there's 4 or 5 pieces bolted together, and the mower goes down the assembly line, and you bolt that sub-assembly onto the machine. And you can save a lot of costs doing that, and you can there's advantages to not being very vertically integrated when you do it. But that's not a practice that we generally do. We tend to make as many parts from the piece part level as possible, or source those items as individually as possible. And that has a big impact on our cost structure. Now, another thing that's in front of mind for many people is the cost of raw material, like steel. And for many years, we've purchased most of our steel out of North Carolina. So we work with domestic steel. That being said, steel prices are affected by the international market. But all in all, today, steel prices are actually lower than they were a couple of years ago. And so we really don't see a reason to be jacking up prices in season to front run what's going on here. We think that we can't come to that conclusion. In fact, we think it could potentially be taking advantage of the situation to front run pricing when there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to happen. So as I say, anything could change, but right now, the facts that are in front of us, our cost structure that we have today, our view is let's make hay while the sun shines. This is the reality where we stand, and if the reality changes, we'll adapt at that time to that reality. So with that in mind, we're doing all we can do to control our cost as best as possible, working deeply with many of our suppliers. And we understand that right now we're in season, and you've set your prices per job. Our dealers have bought their inventory. It's go time right now, and now would be a very inopportune time to change prices and disruptive to everybody involved. And so that's why we're holding prices where they're at right now. In fact, we're running a promotion because a lot of good and healthy things are happening in our business today. And I want you to be as well informed as possible. And this is where my sales pitch comes in. I can tell you that if I was giving this advice to friends and family, it would be the exact same thing. I'm quite confident prices are not going down. I'm quite confident that prices are going to go up above average. And I think that window of time is especially in May and June here, especially early June, where the options that are in dealers are still pretty well available, and it's pre what some of these price increases could go up. So, I mean, if you don't need a mower, don't go out and buy a mower. But if you know that you need to fill a hole, or you have it on your radar that you need to bring the age down in your fleet a little bit, I would say that right now is really the best time to make those types of purchases, and you're likely to save money over waiting for something later. So hopefully this gets some clarity as to what we see is going on. We actually are very excited about many things that are going on in our business and the economy, and we wish you the best the rest of the season.